So what would you say to moms and dads in this same kind of feeling?
First of all, you're not alone. There's a lot of people that feel guilt. And I think, with your podcast and just talking more vulnerably about, our relationship with money, like
Yeah.
it, a lot of us feel that way, right? And also, in order to kind of transcend that, like we do have to feel it, right? Like I think for a lot of us, we're
Hmm.
like, oh, I shouldn't feel this way, or oh,
Yep.
and we suppress it. But like you're saying, like, okay, before I push this send button or this purchase button, like I'm going to feel this wave of guilt wash over me, right? It's
Hmm.
easier said than done. It is a practice, it is a skill, but it
Yep.
is one of those things of like releasing, because I think, in the self-development world, we talk a lot about like, oh, well, like higher vibrations and think positively, but we can't think positively when we have a lot of suppressed and repressed emotions within us. And so
Yeah.
it's like feeling that what needs to be felt. Like, why do you feel the guilt? And what I realize is a lot of times it comes back to like, I don't feel worthy, or I don't feel
Mm.
deserving, right? Like that's a lot of what I've had to work through of like, no, I am deserving of having nice clothes that fit my body and that feel good.
Yeah.
And I think it's also a lot of conditioning, right? Like mom guilt. And I don't know
Uh,
how many dads feel this way, but like mom guilt is a social construct. Like
hmm.
why are we feeling guilt for asking for what we want, for spending time by ourselves, for it's this almost this award that like who has been the guiltiest and struggled the most award, like
Yes. Yes.
versus
Jeez.
ver- versus no, I love my kids and I love my time by myself. And
Hmm.
by honoring and, like your children get to see that mom buys herself clothes, and then your daughter and son will replicate that for themselves, right? Like we
Hmm.
are being the example for our children, right? So,
Yeah.
so I think it's, is first and foremost is like the awareness, like even noticing that you have guilt, right? Like celebrating that and then also
Hmm.
feeling it. And then also then at that point, then by, passing through there and being like, okay, now what do I want to feel when I purchase things for myself?
Yeah. That's wonderful. It makes so much sense, and it did bring me some light to the heaviness that I did feel. And I agree with you. It's a process. It's not something that happens overnight. We have a lot of conditioning. I, as a younger child, was raised by a single mom. So there was that piece of the puzzle of, I remember my mom saying a lot, we can't afford it right now. And I started to say that to my kids recently, like, okay, we have way too many toys in our basement. So I'm going to tell them we can't afford it when really we can. And what are some other versions of what I can tell my kids and tell myself during those moments?
Yeah, I think one of the things is tuning in when you say you can't afford it, like really getting clear and feeling what does that feel like in your body? And for me, can't afford is like this contraction, like your
Hmm.
mom, right? Like I think
Yeah.
our generation, right? Like our parents told us they can't afford it.
Yeah.
We can afford it, but we're choosing not to purchase it at this moment, right? Like it's not maybe in alignment with our values, or we have, mom and dad feel like we've got plenty of toys in this moment. We want to choose to use our money in different ways and what we value. But like I have found that word of choice, right? Like you could buy more toys if you wanted to. You could not pay you know,
Mm.
you could not pay lots of bills, or you could not pay to savings, or there's so many different ways that we could use our money. And so instead of saying I can't afford it, saying it's not,
Hmm.
purchasing that in this moment isn't in alignment with what mom and dad are using our funds for, or how. And the other thing too, I think, I mean, depending on what age the kids are, but like
Hmm.
empowering our children, like how do you want to, like that's not in alignment, like what I've started doing with our daughter.
Hmm.
She's 12, like that's not in alignment with what dad and I value spending our money on. But how would you like to generate money to go buy it
Yeah.
yourself?
Hmm.
And we are the parents, are the ones that put all the stories on it. Like when I say that to my kids, she just thinks of all of the ideas to just go generate money.
Wow. Wow.
And so it's fun for her. She's like, oh, I
Great.
can do this and I can do this and I can do this. And so I think a lot of times we think, at least I did for sure, I thought I had to be the only person that provided for my child because
Hmm.
I was the parent, versus what do I want to give and purchase and what's in alignment with our values and what's not and what isn't, then how else can they receive that? So we aren't like the only ones that feels like that felt heavy to me of feeling like I was
Yeah.
the only one that was like, I have to, provide all the things that she wants kind of thing.
I love that. I love empowering them and also giving them that idea of you are in charge of your own money. Like you can
Yeah.
bring it in yourself. You can find these alternatives and that's really cool. I'm going to think about that for my 9-year-old because I think he could definitely come up with his own versions of things. So I love that. It's a huge piece of it.